Hello, everybody. This is Catholic Dad, episode number 105. I still have laryngitis, just to let you know. Like you couldn't figure that out. But my college kid asked me the other day, he's doing a project in college, and he asked me, why did the housing market crash? When it did, we had a big housing market crash back in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, which essentially almost took down the entire world global economy. And so I had to explain some basic economics to my kid, and I thought I would share them with the people that watch Catholic Dad videos. So why did the housing market crash? Anyway, it all goes back to a little story called the price of money. The price of money is something very, very interesting that it used to be in America before the central banks that the price of money were set by the marketplace. That if there were low saving rates in society, there weren't enough saving. If we had very low savings in society, then the price of money would go up, and therefore the interest rates would rise, and it would encourage people to take money, put it in a bank, and to capitalize the system. But if there's lots of savings and the price of money goes down, the interest rates drop, and it encourages people to take that money, that capitalize, and to capitalize investment and start building economies. And that's the way it should work. You should always have savings before investment. That's a sound policy and a sound way to do business, and it's what the marketplace in America has done until the Federal Reserve System was created. But in the housing market, I don't know if you remember, in 9/11, essentially, I think that was kind of the starting point of it. In the big dot-com bubble that crashed in 2000, the federal government, or the Federal Reserve, I'm sorry, dropped interest rates very, very, very low. And so what that did was it dropped the price of money, and it dropped the interest rates. And so therefore people got a lot of cheap money with very artificially low interest rates. And so did we have a lot of savings at that point in time? No, we didn't. So we should have had high interest rates. And so when they dropped the interest rates very, very low, it encouraged people to take money to invest it into society. And what people decided to do was buy all sorts of asset classes, but predominantly houses. And the houses, they were appreciating at like a ginormous rate, 10, 15, 20% year over year. And people were making a lot of money on flipping houses and buying houses. And eventually everybody sees everybody making all this money, so they all start jumping in, buying houses with no money down, with the artificially low teaser rates. And so people were buying houses and speculating that they were going to go up forever. Well, anyway, what happened by the end of George W. Bush's second term was the federal government started inching up interest rates, and they started pushing it up because the economy was becoming overheated because of too much investment in society and too many loans. And so as you have all these outstanding loans with adjustable rate mortgages and everything else, and you start pushing the price of money higher and higher and higher, suddenly the money to borrow starts getting more expensive. And therefore the people that bought all these houses and speculated on constantly rising house prices, eventually they didn't have anybody to hand the houses off to. Essentially, the buyer market dried up. And when the buyer market dried up, suddenly all these McMansions that people were building and all these speculative investments that people thought were good suddenly crashed through the floor. And what they held were, they had these dumb houses nobody wanted and a ton of debt. So everybody walked away from the debt. When you walk away from the debt, who gets holding the cards? It's the banks. The banks get holding the cards. So we had a big banking collapse, which that's what that TARP bailout program was all about. One of the worst moves in the history of the United States of America was the TARP bailout. But nonetheless, it bailed out the banks, the insurance companies, everything else. I think Lehman went under. And so what caused the housing crash was the housing boom. It wasn't the housing crash caused the housing crash. The problem wasn't the falling the house prices. That was the solution to the problem. The problem was the rapidly rising house prices under artificial conditions. And so what had caused the housing boom? Too much free money was flowing in the hands of potential house buyers. That's what it was. And when the interest rates went up, nobody wanted to take those houses from them because they didn't want to borrow money at higher rates. And therefore, all of a sudden, the housing market collapsed. Now, here's the deal. Think about this. In the housing market, when we had the big housing market crash, what we had was not enough savings, too much debt, and high asset prices. That's what we had. Those were all the problems. Those are problems. And artificially low interest rates, right? It started to rise. What do we have now? We have very little savings. We have a ton of debt, student loan debt too, by the way. That's another asset bubble that needs to go away. But so we have very low savings, We have tons of debt and high asset prices. What do you think's going to happen now? We're 2006, 2007, 2008, but worse now because we have more debt than we had before. We have, more expensive houses than we had in the peak of the housing boom, and we have very low savings rates. So the same exact conditions that created the housing crash and the Great Recession, they're alive and well today, but worse. And so this next correction that we're going to see, perhaps within the next year, my suspicion is the Federal Reserve cronies and the globalists that are trying to run the world economy are going to try to time it with the next election cycle. But I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, because I don't know if you saw this. The bond curve inverted today, the first time since 2007. When that happens, that's a good indicator that we're heading in a slowdown. The Federal Reserve pulled back that it was supposed to raise interest rates all year. All of a sudden, it said it's going to freeze them, and it also said it's decreasing the amount of growth. And so I think all the signs are clear that within the next year or so, we're gonna witness a pretty big sell-off in multiple asset classes, including housing. Probably starting with housing, student loan debt, car debt, the stock markets, and so on and so forth, the equity markets. And so that's how you cause crashes. That's how you cause housing collapses. That's how you cause asset bubble collapses. You have too much hot money coming into an asset class, and that creates a bubble. And then the bubble needs to deflate, and when it deflates, that's called a crash or a recession. It's basic economics, and I'm going to encourage people to talk economics at the dinner table. These are basic topics that everybody should know. Anyway, this is Catholic Dad, making you think about it. Get the Mass, pray the daily rosary. Please like or subscribe if you like the contents of these videos. God bless you.